He raised a metal bar into the blinding winter light. And a former Navy SEAL knew this moment would not pass like all the others. Inside a narrow iron cage, the dog didn't bark, didn't growl. He simply looked at him through the cold metal bars. There was no pleading in those eyes, only waiting. 30 seconds can turn a man into a bystander, or into someone who steps forward. Ronan knew what "I could have saved him" feels like, and he would not carry that weight again. Where are you watching from? Don't forget to like and subscribe so we can continue bringing you meaningful stories. And now, let's begin. The morning was painfully bright. Snow still clung to the edges of sidewalks in the small Michigan town, hardened into uneven crusts that caught the sun and flung it back into the world like shards of broken glass. The sky above Lake Superior was a clean, pitiless blue, the kind of blue that felt almost judgmental in its clarity. Ronan Vale walked through it as he walked through most things now. Alert, quiet, measured. But he stood a fraction over 6 feet tall, just shy of 6 feet 1 inch, with the kind of lean, disciplined build that came from function rather than vanity. His shoulders were broad, but not exaggerated, his posture unconsciously straight, as if the years of military bearing had calcified into bone. He was clean-shaven, jaw square and defined, cheekbones sharp, beneath skin lightly weathered by northern wind. His hair, dark brown, was cut short in a military style, slightly longer than regulation, but still deliberate. His gray-blue eyes had a way of holding steady without aggression, without softness either. They suggested a man who had seen enough to stop judging quickly. He wore the same clothes he wore nearly every day. An old olive gray tactical combat shirt, fabric softened by years, faintly faded at the shoulders and wrists. Underneath, a darker red thermal layer showed slightly at the collar, the only quiet warmth in an otherwise muted palette. His combat pants, earth-toned and worn at the knees, and hung naturally on him, no longer crisp. Old military work boots grounded him to the frozen pavement. A battered military watch rested on his wrist, scratched, reliable, unadorned. He wasn't going anywhere important. He rarely was. The sound stopped him. Metal striking metal, a hollow, violent clang that traveled wrong through the air. Then a voice. "Shut up, you useless piece of trash!" Ronan didn't react outwardly, but something inside him tightened. He shifted direction slightly, following the sound toward an old auto repair garage near the edge of town. The building had once been white. Now it was a peeling, oil-stained gray. A rusted chain-link fence surrounded the back lot. The place smelled of cold grease and stale exhaust. Another clang. Another curse. And then he saw it. A German shepherd was chained short to an iron post near the back of the yard. The chain was too tight to allow more than a few steps of movement. But the dog's coat, sable shades of cream, gray, and black, was matted in places, dull where it should have shone. Its ribs pressed faintly against thinning fur. One ear stood upright. The other twitched inconsistently. Its eyes were amber, not bright, not dull, just tired. A man stood over it. Gage Halbrook. Ronan didn't know his name yet, but he saw him clearly. Mid-30s, thick-necked, broad in a careless way rather than disciplined. A patchy beard crawled unevenly across his jaw. His hair was buzzed unevenly, like he had done it himself. A faded flannel shirt hung open over a stained t-shirt. His boots were heavy and caked with oil. His face carried the permanent squint of someone who had spent too many years angry at circumstances he never tried to change. Gage kicked a metal bucket toward the dog. "Shut your mouth," The dog didn't bark. That was what caught Ronan. It didn't bark back. It didn't bare teeth. It didn't whine. It looked up. And then it looked past Gage, as at him, not pleading, not begging, just looking. There are moments when time folds in on itself. Gage bent, grabbed a metal rod leaning against the garage wall. 30 seconds. That was all it ever took. In 30 seconds, you decided whether you acted or whether you lived with it afterward. The metal rod rose into the cold air, and the world narrowed. Ronan wasn't in Michigan anymore. He was back in a desert heat so intense it vibrated, sand in his mouth, the smell of explosive residue. A shepherd running point ahead of his unit, powerful, focused, trained to read death before humans could. An improvised explosive device. No time. The dog had lunged forward. The blast followed. The dog did not get up. 30 seconds then. 30 seconds now. The rod hovered. Ronan stepped through the gate without asking permission. "Drop it." His voice was calm, low, cold as January lake water. Gage turned, startled, then irritated. "Mind your business." The rod shifted in his grip. Ronan's gaze didn't waver. "Unchain him." Gage laughed, sharp, humorless. "Or what?" The mistake was assuming Ronan needed to answer that. The confrontation lasted less than a minute. No cinematic punches. No exaggerated violence. Gage swung first, not at Ronan, but out of reflexive anger. Ronan intercepted the motion with clean efficiency. A shift of balance, a controlled grip. The rod clattered to the frozen pavement. Gage found himself off balance, restrained just enough to understand the difference between bluster and capability. Ronan did not hurt him more than necessary, but he made it clear he could. Gage yanked free, breathing hard. "You want the damn mutt?" he spat. "Take it. It's useless anyway." Ronan looked at the chain, then at the dog. The dog had not moved. It did not cower. It did not lunge. It watched. And then, something strange. The dog shifted slightly, not backward, forward. As it placed itself subtly between Ronan and Gage, not aggressively, not dramatically, just enough. A weak, half-starved animal, positioning itself as if shielding the stranger who had stepped in. Ronan felt the breath leave him. It wasn't fear. It was recognition, that instinct, that loyalty, even now. The world resumed its pace. Gage rubbed his wrist, scowling. "You paying or not?" Ronan reached into his pocket. He knew exactly how much was in there. Rent money, fuel, groceries. Movements deliberate. His fingers brushed movements deliberate. His fingers brushed through coarse, neglected fur. Beneath it, muscle. Underfed, but real. The dog's nose touched his wrist briefly. Warm, alive. 10 minutes after the rod had risen, Ronan walked out of the yard with the dog beside him. Not dragging, not leading, walking. He didn't look back. He did not feel heroic. He felt steadier. Because he knew something with brutal clarity. He could survive many things, but he could not survive another memory of "I could have." The snow glare softened as clouds drifted faintly over the sun. Ronan reached his truck, opened the passenger door. The dog hesitated only a second before climbing in. As Ronan closed the door, he caught his reflection faintly in the glass. Square jaw. Unshaven skin smooth from discipline. Gray-blue eyes that had seen explosions, and silence. For the first time in a long while, those eyes did not look empty. He rested his hand briefly on the steering wheel. 30 seconds. That was all it ever took. And this time, he had chosen. The engine started. The truck pulled away. Behind them, the garage shrank in the mirror. Ahead, the lake stretched wide and cold and bright. He did not yet know the dog's name. He only knew one thing. He would not turn his back again. And that was enough for today. The veterinary clinic smelled like antiseptic and wet fur. It was too bright. Fluorescent light flattened everything into clinical honesty. No shadows, no room for illusion. Ronan stood near the reception desk with the German shepherd beside him, one steady hand resting lightly against the dog's shoulder. The dog leaned subtly into the contact, not from affection yet, from calculation. He was still assessing. The receptionist, a college-aged woman with pale freckles and hair dyed copper red, but had frozen for half a second when Ronan walked in. Not because of him, but because of the dog. "You need help?" she asked gently, eyes flicking between the animal's ribs and the thin line of dried grime along his flank. "Yes," Ronan said simply. Dr. Helena Cross emerged from the back hallway a moment later. She was in her late 30s, perhaps nearing 40. Tall, nearly 5'8", with a lean build that suggested someone accustomed to long hours on her feet. Her dark brown hair was tied into a low, practical knot. A faint scar traced along her left wrist, half hidden beneath the cuff of her scrub jacket. Not surgical, not accidental. Old. Her face held a calm intelligence sharpened by years of watching fragile things break. Her eyes moved over Ronan first, not admiring, not intimidated, evaluating. Square jaw, clean-shaven. Military posture he hadn't consciously dropped. Faded olive combat shirt. Boots worn but maintained. And then her gaze lowered to the dog. Her expression shifted. "How long has he been like this?" "Today's the first day he's been mine," Ronan replied. Something flickered in her eyes at that. Not judgment, not approval, recognition of complication. "Bring him back." The exam room was colder than the lobby. The dog stood on the metal table, tense but not snapping. He watched every movement Helena made. His ears twitched at the sound of stainless steel instruments. When she reached to check his gums, he stiffened, then allowed it. "He's severely underweight," Helena said quietly. "Dehydrated. Skin lesions consistent with Sarcoptes scabiei, mange, possibly secondary bacterial infection." She parted the fur gently near his shoulder. Angry patches of irritated skin revealed themselves beneath. "He's been living in unsanitary conditions for weeks, maybe months." Ronan absorbed the information without visible reaction. "He contagious?" he asked. Yes." She didn't soften it. "Humans can contract it. It won't kill you, but it can cause severe itching, rash, secondary infection. You'll need gloves, disinfectant protocol, bedding isolation, daily treatment." She moved to check his eyes. "His pupils are reactive. That's good." The dog's amber gaze never left Ronan. "Neurologically," Helena continued, "there's trauma, possibly repetitive stress response. He may react unpredictably to sudden movement." She paused. "You understand that?" Ronan met her eyes. "Yes." Helena straightened slightly. "I need to ask you something." He waited. "Why?" The question was simple. It wasn't accusatory. It was clinical. Ronan didn't answer immediately, because the answer wasn't simple. He could have said, "Because someone had to." He could have said, "Because it was wrong." But that wasn't it. "Because I won't do that twice," he said finally. Helena held his gaze longer this time. She didn't ask what that meant. Instead, she said, "Oh, his survival odds are roughly 50-50. The room hummed faintly with fluorescent buzz. "Okay," Ronan said. "That's not optimism," she clarified. "That's statistical." He nodded once. "Better odds than some missions I've taken." The corner of her mouth almost lifted, not quite a smile. "Does he have a name?" Ronan looked at the dog, not at the wounds, not at the ribs, at the eyes. "Ares," he said. Helena arched an eyebrow. "God of war?" "Yes." She considered that. He doesn't look like a god of war." "Not yet." Helena reached to administer a topical medication. Ares flinched, but didn't pull away. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of retreating from the sting, the dog shifted closer to Ronan, pressed his flank lightly against Ronan's thigh, not seeking comfort, bracing, as if anchoring. Helena froze for half a second. "That's unusual," she murmured. "What is?" Ronan asked. "Dogs that have been abused often either snap or shut down. He's doing neither." Ares's amber eyes remained steady. "He's choosing." The word lingered in the sterile air. Choosing to trust, despite evidence not to. Ronan felt something tighten in his chest. Not pain, not relief. Recognition. And then the moment passed. Helena resumed treatment, but the weight of that observation stayed with him. After 40 minutes, prescriptions were printed, instructions explained, follow-ups scheduled. "Daily ivermectin-based treatment," Helena said. "Topical sulfur rinse twice weekly. Isolation for at least 3 weeks." She removed her gloves carefully. "You're going to have to disinfect everything." "I will." "And if he bites you?" "He won't." "That's confidence. It's assessment." She studied him again. "You've worked with K9 units before." It wasn't a question. "Yes." She nodded slowly. "That explains your posture around him. You're not crowding. You're not dominating." Ronan clipped the temporary clinic leash gently. "He's not a threat." "Not yet," she corrected softly. "He's an animal in pain." There was no accusation in it, just truth. At the front desk, Ronan paid without hesitation. The total was not small. He did not flinch. As they stepped outside, the sunlight seemed harsher than before. Ares hesitated at the threshold, blinking. The cold air hit his lungs. He inhaled sharply. Ronan crouched slightly. "It's fine." The dog stepped forward. They reached the truck. Ares climbed in more confidently this time. The drive back to the cabin was quiet. Lake Superior shimmered under the noon light, vast and indifferent. Inside the truck, Ronan kept one hand steady on the wheel. The other rested loosely near Ares's shoulder. He thought about protocol, isolation, disinfection, gloves. He thought about the itch that might crawl across his own skin. He thought about sleep, or the lack of it. He did not think about cost. At a stoplight, he glanced sideways. Ares was watching the passing world with narrowed focus. Not curious. Evaluating. Good, Ronan thought, stay sharp. When they reached the cabin, a modest wooden structure nestled between pines, Ronan opened the passenger door. The cabin smelled faintly of cedar and old coffee. He guided Ares inside slowly, step by step. The wooden floor creaked under boots and paws. Ronan removed an old wool blanket from a storage chest and laid it near the far corner of the living area. Temporary quarantine zone. He filled a stainless steel bowl with water. Ares approached cautiously, drank, and stopped. Began applying the first treatment. He opened the medication package. The sulfur smell was sharp, unpleasant. Ares didn't resist when Ronan began applying the first treatment. He winced, but he did not pull away. Outside, wind moved through pine branches in low whispers. Inside, the cabin felt smaller than usual, but not emptier. When the first round of care was complete, Ronan leaned back against the wall. Ares lay down slowly on the wool blanket. Their eyes met. No heroic swell, no cinematic shift, just two living beings in a quiet room. "You're not dying here," Ronan said quietly. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't tender, it was a statement of intent. Ares's ears twitched faintly at the tone. Then he lowered his head, not in surrender, in rest. Ronan glanced at the military watch on his wrist. 3 hours since the garage. The day had shifted completely. He exhaled slowly. There would be disinfecting. There would be itching. Outside, snow reflected gold instead of. Outside, snow reflected gold instead of white. Inside, a former soldier sat on the wooden floor beside a recovering war he had chosen. And for the first time in a long while, he did not feel like he was waiting for something to explode. Night in northern Michigan did not fall gently. It settled. Heavy, soundless, absolute. The cabin stood quiet beneath a sky sharpened by cold pine trees surrounding it like dark sentries. Inside, the wooden walls held the day's fading warmth, but the air carried the faint medicinal scent of sulfur and disinfectant. A small lamp near the couch cast a muted amber glow across the floorboards. Ronan sat at the kitchen table long after sunset, sleeves rolled to his forearms, hands steady but still. Across the room, on the wool blanket near the window, the old military watch ticked with mechanical certainty. Across the room, on the wool blanket near the far wall, Ares lay on his side, breathing shallow, not sleeping deeply. Ronan had placed the water bowl within reach. Medication schedule written down. Gloves folded neatly beside the sink. Windows locked. Back door checked twice. He did not think of it as anxiety. He thought of it as habit. Outside, wind shifted through the pines with a low murmur that sometimes sounded almost human. The cabin creaked once, then again. Ares's ear twitched. Ronan noticed immediately. The dog's body was still thin, ribs faintly visible beneath patched fur. The mange lesions had been treated earlier, the irritated skin now dulled beneath medication. But trauma lived deeper than skin. Ares's paws jerked slightly. A low growl escaped his throat. Not aggressive, involuntary. Ronan leaned back slowly in his chair, watching. He knew that sound. He had heard it before, years ago, in desert tents where K9 units slept between patrols. Dogs that scanned in their sleep. Dogs that chased ghosts their handlers could not see. Ares's breathing changed. Faster. A tremor passed through his flank. Then a sharp, strained whine broke from him, thin, involuntary. And something inside Ronan snapped taut. He did not rush. He stood carefully, boots silent on the wood, and crossed the cabin. He lowered himself to one knee beside the blanket. "Ares." The dog's eyes remained closed, but the growl deepened. Ronan reached out, slowly, placing one hand lightly on the dog's shoulder. The contact was steady, Firm, not restraining. Present. Ares jolted awake. For a fraction of a second, confusion flared in amber eyes. Muscles tightened, teeth flashed, not fully bared, but near. Then recognition. But Ronan did not move his hand. He did not flinch. His gray-blue gaze held steady, calm, unchallenging. "You're here," he said quietly. The dog blinked once. Breathing slowed. The tension drained, not completely, but enough. Ronan remained kneeling longer than necessary. He didn't analyze why. When he finally stood, he did not return to the table. Instead, he switched off the lamp and stretched out on the couch. He did not undress. He never fully did. The darkness pressed close. Then he closed his eyes, and the past opened them again. It began with sound. Not in the cabin. In memory. A distant metallic click. Heat. Sand. The low whir of drone surveillance somewhere overhead. Ronan was back in it. The weight of gear, the press of helmet against his skull, sweat beneath tactical fabric. The shepherd ahead of them, powerful, focused, tail level, scanning. He remembered the dog's name. He did not allow himself to say it anymore. The moment replayed the same every time. A pause, and a subtle shift in the dog's posture. Then forward motion. The blast was not cinematic. It was brutal and immediate. Ronan woke with his hand clenched into the couch cushion. The cabin ceiling replaced desert sky. His heart hammered hard enough to shake his ribs. He sat up abruptly. The room was silent. Except it wasn't. Across the room, Ares had risen to his feet. Not panicked. Alert. He stood facing Ronan, ears forward, head tilted slightly, watching. Ronan exhaled through his nose. The old military watch read 2:17 a.m. He swung his legs off the couch. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Ares did something unexpected. He walked, slowly, across the wooden floor and stopped beside the couch. Not touching. Not demanding. Just standing there. And then, without prompting, Ares lowered himself deliberately onto the floor beside Ronan's boots. Not on the blanket. Not in his designated corner. Closer, as if correcting distance. Ronan felt something shift. Subtle, but undeniable. The dog was not seeking protection. He was offering presence. It unsettled Ronan more than aggression would have, because it meant choice. Ronan leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. "You don't have to," he murmured. Ares's ear flicked. He stayed. The clock ticked. Wind moved along the cabin walls. In the silence that followed, Ronan realized something he had not allowed himself to articulate before. The nightmares had not stopped since he came home. But this was the first night they did not end alone. Sleep returned in fragments. Dawn arrived pale and slow, sliding through the eastern window in cold light. Ronan stood before Ares did. Routine steadied him. He washed his hands, prepared the medication, measured the food carefully, small portions to avoid overwhelming a weakened system. When he knelt again to administer treatment, Ares did not resist. He endured. There was still tension in the dog's frame, still guardedness in his eyes, but there was also something new. Expectation. Ronan finished and removed his gloves, discarding them into the bin near the sink. He poured fresh water. Ares drank more this time. Progress. Ronan opened the cabin door briefly to let in morning air. The cold struck sharp and clean, pine and frost layered together. Ares approached the threshold, paused, then stepped outside. The snow under his paws crunched faintly. He moved slowly, muscles cautious but responsive. Ronan watched from the doorway. The sunlight caught in Ares's coat, revealing the natural gradation of sable coloring beneath the damage. Cream blending into gray, darkening toward black along the spine. A strong animal. Not broken, just interrupted. Ares stopped. Midway across the yard. He lifted his head, ears forward, listening. Ronan followed his gaze instinctively, scanning tree line, horizon, road beyond. Nothing visible. But Ares remained fixed for several seconds, then slowly relaxed. Ronan did not dismiss it. But he never dismissed instinct. He stepped outside fully now, boots compressing snow, standing beside the dog, shoulder nearly aligned. "You heard something," he said quietly. Ares did not look at him, but his tail shifted once. Subtle. Communication without spectacle. After a moment, Ronan gestured toward the cabin. "Inside." Ares obeyed. Not instantly, but willingly. Back inside, Ronan closed the door and locked it. He did not consider that paranoia. He considered it preparation. The cabin felt different in daylight, less confined, less haunted. He glanced once toward the couch, toward the place where both of them had woken from separate wars. Then he moved to the kitchen counter, pulling a notebook from the drawer. He wrote, "Day 1, night reaction severe. Morning response improved. Alert behavior intact." He paused, then added, "Trust building." He set the pen down. Ares lay once again on the wool blanket, but this time not curled tight. He stretched slightly, exposing part of his vulnerable underside before catching himself and adjusting. Ronan noticed the instinctive correction. Healing was not linear. Neither of them expected it to be. He leaned back against the counter, watching the dog breathe. Not counting, not bracing, just observing. Outside, the lake shimmered beyond the trees. Cold. Endless. Ronan did not know what the coming days would bring. He did not think about the garage, or gauge, or unfinished consequences. Not yet. Right now there was only this cabin. This animal. And the quiet understanding that two separate battles had found the same shelter. He did not feel redeemed. He did not feel heroic. He felt present. And for a man who had spent months feeling suspended between past and present, that was something close to relief. Ares's eyes closed again. Not from exhaustion, from trust measured in inches. Ronan remained standing a while longer, listening, not for explosions, but for breathing. A week changed small things, not miracles, not transformation, just degrees. The lesions along Ares' shoulders had begun to dry under treatment. The redness dulled from angry crimson to mottled pink. His coat, still thin in patches, no longer smelled of neglect, but of sulfur and clean water. He ate without hesitation now, measured portions, 3 times daily, and drank deeply afterward. Ronan kept routine like a perimeter. Morning medication, controlled exercise, sanitizing surfaces, or gloves discarded with precision, bedding rotated and washed, windows checked, doors checked. He did not call it vigilance. He called it structure. The cabin had settled into a rhythm. Pine shadows shifted across the wooden floor in predictable arcs. The lake beyond the trees shimmered steel blue in midday light. Aries no longer froze at every creak of timber. He tracked sound, yes, but with calculation rather than panic. On the 7th morning, Ronan clipped a temporary black harness around Aries' chest. It was simple, utilitarian, with a dark red trim faintly visible along the stitching. Not decorative, just contrast against sable fur. Aries stood still while Ronan adjusted the straps. "Short walk," Ronan said. The dog's ears angled forward. Outside, snow had thinned along the road, melting into gray slush near the edges. The air held the metallic scent of thawing earth. Ronan walked at an even pace, boots steady on gravel. Aries matched him stride for stride, her lean body still regaining strength, but moving with contained energy. They did not speak. They did not need to. The town's main road stretched quiet beneath a pale sun. A hardware store. A diner. The old marina office near the lake. A pickup truck idled outside a bait shop. Then it happened. Aries slowed, subtle at first. Then he stopped. His head lifted sharply, ears erect, muscles tightened beneath the harness. Ronan felt the change through the leash before he consciously saw it. "Well, what is it?" he asked quietly. Ara's nose flared. The wind shifted slightly, carrying something faint but distinct. Oil. Burned metal. Old rubber. Not fresh. Lingering. Ronan followed the dog's line of sight across the road. A white panel van sat parked near an auto parts store 2 blocks down. Rust along the wheel wells. No business logo. Windows darkened. Nothing remarkable. Except Aries did not blink. He began to pull, not frantically, but with insistence. Ronan adjusted his stance. "Easy." The dog's tail stiffened, or horizontal. He wasn't afraid. He was focused. Ronan's gaze sharpened. He scanned the sidewalk, the vehicles, reflections in windows. His pulse did not spike, but it sharpened. "All right," he murmured. They crossed the street. As they approached the auto parts store, the scent grew stronger. Aries' breathing shifted, deeper, investigative. He moved toward the rear lot rather than the front entrance. Ronan allowed the deviation. Behind the store, an alley opened between buildings. Snow there was untouched, layered thin and gray. Oil stains marked the concrete near a garage door. Aries stopped near a discarded chain lying half-buried in slush. He lowered his head, sniffed, then lifted it again toward the van. Ronan's jaw tightened slightly. He recognized that chain. Not identical, but similar. Industrial grade, the kind used in garages, the kind that had bitten into fur. He stepped toward the van. A man emerged from the side entrance of the auto parts store, mid-40s, with lean, wiry build, salt and pepper beard trimmed close, weathered skin, eyes cautious but not hostile. He wore a denim jacket over a thermal shirt. Hands rough with grease. "You lost?" the man asked. Ronan turned slightly. "No." The man glanced at Aries. "Nice shepherd." "Thanks." The man shifted his weight. "That van yours?" Ronan asked it casually. The man followed his gaze and shook his head. "Been there a couple days. Belongs to someone doing repairs inside, I think." "Name?" The man shrugged. "Guy called Gage. Comes and goes." The word landed. Gage. The air seemed to thin. Ronan kept his expression neutral. The mechanic, because that's what he clearly was, studied Ronan more closely now. "You military?" he asked bluntly. Ronan didn't answer immediately. "Used to be." The man nodded once. "Figured." There was no admiration in it, just recognition of posture, of controlled stillness. Ares shifted again, more insistent this time. Then, abruptly, as Ares did something Ronan had not seen before. He lowered himself to the ground, not submissive, not resting. Pressed low, as if indicating something beneath the van. Ronan crouched. Under the rear axle, partially concealed by shadow, lay a metal crate. Vent holes along its sides. Empty, but recent. The snow around it had been disturbed, melted slightly, refrozen. Ares's nostrils flared. He let out a low, contained sound, not a growl. Recognition. Ronan's heartbeat steadied into something colder. He did not open the crate. "You look like someone who just decided. You look like someone who just decided something." Ronan allowed a faint exhale. "Maybe." The mechanic extended a hand. Tom Weller. His grip was firm, honest. A man who had worked with engines longer than with people. There was oil embedded permanently in the creases of his skin. "Ronan." Tom nodded toward the van. "You think that guy's trouble?" Ronan glanced at Ares. The dog remained fixed on the vehicle. "I think," Ronan said quietly, "my dog remembers something." Tom frowned slightly. "That's not nothing." No, it wasn't. They did not linger. Ronan led Ares away from the alley without drawing further attention. The dog resisted only once, glancing back at the van before complying. On the walk home, Ronan's mind moved differently. He replayed sensory fragments. The chain, the scent, the crate, the name. Reached the cabin. Ronan removed the reached the cabin. Ronan removed the harness slowly. Ares stood in the center of the room, restless energy beneath recovering muscle. "You knew," Ronan said quietly. The dog's ears flicked. He paced once, twice, then stopped near the door again. Waiting. Ronan crouched in front of him. "You don't forget." He understood that. Dogs did not forget scent. And then he called Deputy Mason Calder. Mason? Then he called Deputy Mason Calder. Mason answered on the fourth ring. His voice carried the grounded steadiness of a man used to small-town law enforcement, measured, patient. "Calder. It's Ronan Vale." Pause. "The garage situation?" "Related." Another pause. "Talk." Ronan explained, without embellishment. "On the van. The crate, the chain, the name." Mason exhaled slowly. "I don't have probable cause from that." "I know." "You accusing him of something specific?" "Not yet." Silence stretched across the line. Then Mason said, "You're not the kind to call over instinct alone." "No." Another exhale. "All right, I'll look into vehicle registration. Quietly. Appreciate it. Don't escalate. I won't." When the call ended, Ronan remained still for a moment. Ares had settled again near the blanket, but he was not lying down fully. Alert. Ronan approached and knelt beside him. "You're not just reacting," he murmured. "You're tracking." Ares's amber eyes met his, clear, focused. There was no fear in them now. Only memory. Ronan felt the weight of that settle in his chest. This was no longer only about survival. It was about unfinished damage. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the tree line beyond the cabin. The lake shimmered in afternoon light, vast, detached from human affairs. But instinct did not detach. It pointed. It remembered. Behind him, Ares shifted slightly, positioning himself with quiet readiness. Not trembling, not shrinking. Watching. Ronan rested his hand lightly against the wooden frame of the window. He did not feel anger. He felt clarity. If Gage had been involved in something beyond cruelty, something systematic, Ares would know it long before paperwork did. Ronan did not chase the thought further. Not yet. For now, the outline was simple. A scent, and a crate, a name, a dog who did not forget, and a man who no longer intended to look away from what that meant. The cabin remained still. The light faded gradually, and inside the quiet structure of wood and discipline, instinct had drawn a line that would not be easily erased. Pause before weather turns. Ares lay near pause before weather turns. Ares lay near the far wall, breathing steady, though his ears flicked at sounds beyond human range. He was stronger now, not fully restored, but no longer fragile. Ronan moved quietly through the morning routine. Gloves, medication, controlled feeding, observation. The lesions had faded further, more intent. Ronan watched the tree line, more intent. Ronan watched the tree line as much as he watched the dog. He did not assume the van would reappear near the cabin. He did not assume anything. He called Deputy Mason Calder before noon. Mason answered from what sounded like inside his patrol vehicle, faint radio static beneath his voice. "I checked registration," Mason said without preamble. "The van's registered to Gage Halbrook. No current warrants." "Previous complaints?" "Minor disturbances. Nothing prosecutable." Ronan leaned against the kitchen counter, eyes on Ares. "I'm not calling about noise violations." "I know." Mason paused. "You think he's transporting animals illegally?" "I think there's a pattern." "You got proof?" "Not yet." Silence stretched across the line. Mason Calder was a broad-shouldered man in his early 40s, with prematurely graying hair at the temples and a face shaped by years of winter patrols. His features were steady rather than striking. He had the kind of patience that came from working a small town, the kind where everyone thought they knew everyone. He was not cynical. He was careful. "All right," Mason said finally. "You want to observe? We observe. But no confrontation. Agreed? Discreet. Always." When the call ended, Ronan clipped the black harness onto Ares once more. "We walk," he said. They kept distance that afternoon, 2 blocks behind the auto parts store, across from a shuttered storage facility whose corrugated metal siding rattled in the wind. Ronan parked his truck along a side street and waited. Ares sat in the passenger seat, alert but quiet. The sun dipped lower, stretching long shadows across the pavement. An hour passed. Then the van appeared. White. Unmarked. It pulled behind the auto parts store, engine cutting abruptly. Ares's posture changed instantly. He did not bark. He did not lunge. He leaned forward slowly, nostrils working. Ronan felt the shift like voltage. "Easy," he murmured. Gage stepped out of the driver's side. He looked the same. Unshaven, broad, restless. But now he moved with intention rather than irritation. He opened the rear doors. Another man stepped from behind the building. This one was younger, late 20s, narrow-faced, blonde hair tucked under a beanie. His build was thin but wiry. He wore a flannel too big for his frame and moved with quick, anxious energy. He avoided eye contact even when speaking. Gage handed him cash. The younger man nodded repeatedly, as if agreeing to something he did not fully control. Ronan's jaw tightened. "Transaction," he muttered. Mason's patrol car rolled slowly past the intersection, unnoticed. Ronan didn't signal. He didn't need to. Gage and the younger man opened the rear doors fully. Inside the van, Ronan could see only darkness. And then movement. Aries' muscles tensed. His ears flattened briefly. Not fear. Recognition. The younger man reached in and dragged something forward. A metal crate. Same dimensions as the one beneath the axle. Vent holes. Locked. Aries' breathing changed. Sharper now. Ronan's pulse remained steady. He raised his phone and zoomed discreetly. No theatrics. Just documentation. The younger man set the crate down roughly. Something inside shifted. A sound escaped, faint, muffled. Not mechanical, alive. Ronan's fingers tightened around the phone, and then Aries did something that froze the air inside the truck. He made a sound Ronan had not heard before. Not a growl, not a bark. A low, almost broken whine, pulled from somewhere deep in the chest. Recognition not of metal, of presence. His body trembled once, then stilled. He was not reacting to threat. He was reacting to memory. Ronan felt a surge of cold clarity. There were others. Not one incident, not random, systematic. Lit a cigarette and leaned casually against the vehicle as if nothing of consequence had occurred. Mason's cruiser disappeared around the corner, maintaining distance. Ronan lowered the phone. He did not start the engine. He waited until both vehicles departed in opposite directions. Only then did he exhale fully. That evening, Mason met Ronan inside the auto parts store's side office. The manager, a middle-aged woman named Denise Kramer, had agreed to allow them temporary access to security footage. Denise was tall and angular, her silver hair pulled into a severe bun. She wore wire-rimmed glasses and carried herself with the no-nonsense efficiency of someone who had run a family business for decades. Her husband had died 3 winters ago. The store had become both livelihood and anchor. "You think this is about stolen dogs?" she asked quietly, as she rewound footage. "We're not thinking," Mason replied evenly. "We're confirming." Denise nodded. "I've had customers mention missing pets lately." She paused the video at a frame showing the van. "There," she said. The timestamp confirmed the pattern. Multiple visits, short duration, no legitimate transactions logged. Mason folded his arms. "We need someone who's lost an animal willing to talk." Ronan glanced at Aries, who lay near the office doorway, watching the screen as if it meant something to him. He didn't need confirmation to know. But Law did. They did not storm the alley. They did not confront. Instead, Mason reached out through official channels to cross-reference recent missing animal reports. By dusk, a name surfaced. Evelyn Harper, late 60s, widowed, lived 3 miles north of town. Her golden retriever had disappeared 2 weeks prior. Ronan insisted on accompanying Mason when they visited. Evelyn answered the door wrapped in a thick wool cardigan, gray hair loosely pinned back. Her face was narrow, but kind, etched with lines that came from smiling more than frowning. She leaned slightly on a cane, not from weakness, but from a knee surgery that had altered her gait permanently. When Mason explained the situation, her hand trembled. "You think he's alive?" she whispered. "What was his name?" Ronan asked gently. Benny?" Her eyes shone. "He slept at the foot of my bed every night." Ronan did not promise anything. He did not offer hope without ground. "We saw a crate," he said carefully. "And we're building evidence." Evelyn nodded slowly. "I'll testify," she said, voice steadier than expected. "If it helps." Outside her house, dusk settled thick and blue. Ares stood quietly beside Ronan, posture calm but alert. He did not know Benny, but he understood loss. Ronan crouched briefly, hand brushing Ares' neck. This doesn't stop," he murmured. The dog's amber eyes reflected fading light. They returned to the cabin in near silence. Inside, Ronan set the harness aside and leaned both hands against the kitchen counter. This was no longer about suspicion. It was about confirmation. Gage was not simply cruel. He was profiting from fear, from attachment, from trust. Ares moved toward him slowly, not anxious, grounded. Ronan looked down at him. "If we stop now," he said quietly. It continues." Ares held his gaze. No fear, no tremor, just readiness. Outside, wind rose across the lake. Inside the cabin, the line had been drawn clearly now. They would not turn away. The morning of the raid arrived without drama. No storm, no omen. Just a sky so painfully blue, it made the snowfields shimmer like polished steel. Ronan stood outside the cabin as Mason's patrol SUV rolled up the narrow gravel road. The tires crunched over frost. Ares stood at Ronan's left side, harness secured, posture steady. His coat, once dull and brittle, now caught the light in gradients of sable and ash. Muscle had returned to his frame. His amber eyes no longer looked clouded by exhaustion. They looked clear, focused. Deputy Mason Calder stepped out first, bundled in a dark winter jacket, badge visible at his chest. With him were 2 additional officers. Officer Lena Ortiz exited from the passenger side, early 30s, compact and strong, dark hair braided tightly against her scalp. Her expression was sharp but controlled, the kind of gaze that missed nothing. She carried herself with quiet authority, shaped by years in urban narcotics before transferring north for a slower life that never truly became slow. From the back stepped Officer Grant Holloway, tall, broad, mid-40s, thick brown mustache streaked with gray. He moved deliberately, conserving energy like a man who had learned that speed without purpose led to mistakes. His eyes were kind but watchful. "We've got the warrant," Mason said. Ronan nodded once. He did not ask for details, and he did not need them. The warehouse sat behind a line of half-dead spruce trees at the edge of town. It looked unremarkable, a corrugated metal building with faded paint and a rusted sliding door. No signage, no reason to look twice. That was the point. The officers positioned themselves quietly. No sirens, no shouting. Precision. Mason gave a single signal. The side door was forced open cleanly. They moved inside. The smell hit first. Ammonia, metal, fear. Ronan felt Ares stiffen beside him, but did not restrain him unless necessary. The dog's breathing deepened, nostrils flaring. He scanned the space. The interior was dim except for one fluorescent strip buzzing overhead. Rows of crates lined the far wall. Metal. Vent holes. Locked. Gage stood near a folding table stacked with paperwork. He froze when the officers entered. His beard was untrimmed, eyes bloodshot but sharp. For a moment he looked less angry than calculating, a man weighing exits. "There a problem?" he asked, voice rough but attempting calm. Mason held up the warrant. "We're conducting a search." Gage's gaze flicked briefly to Ronan. Recognition without welcome. Officer Ortiz moved efficiently along the crates, checking locks. Officer Holloway secured Gage without struggle. No grand speech, no resistance, just handcuffs clicking into place. But the real tension did not lie with him. It lay within the metal. Ares stepped forward before Ronan consciously guided him. He stopped in front of the third crate from the left. His body did not tremble. It aligned. Focused. Ronan felt it. That subtle, almost invisible shift from companion to working mind. He crouched beside him. "You sure?" he murmured quietly. Ares did not bark. He pressed his nose to the seam of the crate. One firm, deliberate exhale. Officer Ortiz knelt, unlocking it carefully. The metal door creaked open. Inside, a golden retriever blinked against the light. Thin, matted, but alive. What the dog hesitated for only a second before crawling forward weakly. Outside the building, Evelyn Harper waited in Mason's vehicle. Against instruction, she had insisted on coming once she was informed of the operation. When she saw the golden coat through the open door, her composure fractured. "That's him," she breathed. Her voice did not rise. It broke. Ronan stepped back as the reunion unfolded. Benny stumbled into Evelyn's arms, tail thudding weakly against her coat. No dramatics. Just recognition. Just home. As officers continued opening crates, Ares suddenly turned away from the others and walked toward the far corner of the warehouse. No crate, no visible animal. He stopped before a stack of empty cages. Then he sat. Still. Waiting. Ronan followed slowly. "What is it?" Ares's ears tilted forward. Not at movement, at absence. Ronan looked closer. Behind the stack, partially obscured by tarp, lay a ledger book. Paper. Records. Not cages. Not dogs. Transactions. Names. Dates. Amounts. Evidence not of cruelty alone, but structure, organization, profit margins. Ronan felt something colder than anger settle into his chest. This had not been impulsive. It had been business. Officer Ortiz lifted the ledger carefully. "This just changed the charges," she muttered. The weight of it shifted the room. Not just stolen animals. Conspiracy. Extortion. Trafficking. Ares had not found another victim. He had found the map. The remaining crates were opened methodically. 2 more dogs were recovered. A young border collie and an aging husky. Both dehydrated but responsive. Grant Holloway carried the husky outside gently, murmuring to it as though it understood every word. The dog's pale blue eyes followed him with cautious trust. Gage said nothing. His silence was not defiance. It was the silence of a man calculating loss. Mason read him his rights calmly. No shouting. No spectacle. Ronan stood near the open door, winter light flooding in behind him. Just too bright, too clean. It felt almost unfair that sunlight could exist like this inside a place built on fear. Ares returned to his side, No trembling, no scanning. He stood upright, grounded. Ronan crouched again. "You're done," he said softly, not as a command, as recognition. Ares' tail moved once, not exuberant, certain. By late afternoon, animal control vehicles had taken custody of the rescued dogs for immediate veterinary evaluation. Evelyn refused to let go of Benny until she was assured she could follow directly to the clinic. Denise Kramer arrived briefly to confirm she would testify regarding footage timestamps. She looked pale, but resolute. "I knew something wasn't right," she said quietly to Mason. "I just didn't know what." Gage was placed into the back of a patrol car. As the door closed, his eyes locked onto Ronan. There was no apology there, only bitterness. Ronan held the gaze without hostility, without triumph. What looked smaller now, less imposing, just looked smaller now, less imposing, just metal and rust. Ares leaned lightly into Ronan's leg. For the first time since that morning at the garage, weeks ago, Ronan felt something loosen in his chest. Not victory. Release. He looked down at Ares. "You trusted me," he said quietly. The dog held his gaze. Steady, unshaken. In that bright winter glare, Ronan understood something simple and irreversible. The operation had ended. But the change had already happened long before today. Ares was no longer reacting to ghosts. He was standing in present light. And so was Ronan. They walked back toward the truck as the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the snow. No sirens. No applause. Just a quiet ending to a loud chapter. And in the stillness that followed, Ares did not look back at the warehouse. He looked forward. The town moved on faster than Ronan expected. Snow was cleared. Deliveries resumed. The auto parts store opened at 8, as it always had. The warehouse stood empty now, a quiet metal shell waiting for whatever purpose would replace it. News traveled in short bursts. A brief article in the local paper, a mention on the regional station. Gage Halbrook was formally charged. The rest of the world did not pause. But something inside Ronan had. The morning after the arrest, he woke before sunrise. The cabin was silent, except for the low hum of the heater. Pale winter light filtered through the frost-lined window panes. Ares lay near the wood stove, curled but not tense, breathing deep and even. Ronan sat at the edge of his bed for a long moment before standing. He watched the dog, not to check for fear, to check for peace. Ares opened one amber eye, then the other. He did not startle. He did not scan the room. He simply lifted his head. Present. That was new. Ronan stepped into the kitchen and brewed coffee. The scent filled the cabin slowly, warm and grounding. Outside, Lake Superior lay stretched in steel-blue silence, the ice along its edge cracking faintly under temperature shifts. There was no more operation, no warrant, no objective, only aftermath. And that was where most battles were lost. The interview happened 3 days later. Mason had warned him. "Local reporter wants a comment," he said. "Small piece, a human interest angle." Ronan hesitated. He had spent most of his adult life avoiding cameras, but Mason had added something else. "She's respectful. Lost a brother in Afghanistan. She won't sensationalize it." That mattered. The reporter arrived at the cabin just after noon. Her name was Claire Whitaker. Mid-30s, tall and slender, with straight chestnut hair tucked behind one ear. Her skin was pale from northern winters, freckles faint across the bridge of her nose. Listened fully before writing. Thank you listened fully before writing. Thank you for agreeing, she said. Her voice was calm, measured. She noticed Ares immediately. That's him? She asked softly. Ronan nodded. Claire crouched slightly but did not reach out. She allowed Ares to approach first. He stepped forward, sniffed once, then stood beside Ronan again. Trust, but anchored. Claire smiled faintly. May I? She gestured toward a bench outside. Ronan agreed. They sat facing the lake. The light that afternoon was almost painfully bright, sunlight bouncing off snow in sheets of white brilliance. Claire opened her notebook. You were part of the operation that led to the arrest, she began. You purchased the dog weeks before. Yes. What made you step in? Ronan didn't answer immediately. He watched the horizon instead. There was no crowd, no applause. Exhaled slowly. For 30 seconds. She exhaled slowly. For 30 seconds. She waited. He did not elaborate yet. Ares shifted at his feet, pressing lightly against his leg. Claire noticed. He stays close, she said. He chooses to. There was a difference. As Claire scribbled a note, Ares suddenly lifted his head and turned toward the tree line. Not sharply. Not alarmed. Just attentive. Ronan followed his gaze. Nothing moved visibly among the trees. No sound reached human ears. But Ares' posture changed subtly, not defensive, watchful, as if confirming something unseen, then just as quietly, he relaxed. Ronan felt a strange certainty settle in his chest. Not about danger, about completion. He looked down at Ares. You're good, he murmured. Claire glanced between them. You talk to him like he understands every word. He understands enough. And in that moment, something shifted inside Ronan. Not the urgency of a mission, not the edge of conflict, but the realization that silence no longer meant emptiness. Claire closed her notebook gently. There's a narrative forming, she said. Former Navy SEAL saves abused dog, helps dismantle trafficking operation. Ronan's jaw tightened slightly. That's not accurate. Which part? All of it. Claire's brow furrowed faintly. You did intervene? Yes. You assisted law enforcement? Yes. You rehabilitated him. Ronan shook his head once. He rehabilitated himself. Claire studied him more carefully now. Then why? She asked quietly. Why take the risk? Why spend your savings? The lake wind picked up, brushing frost across the snow's surface like shifting sand. Ronan leaned forward, forearms resting on his knees. In Afghanistan, he began evenly, our unit had a K-9 attached to us. His name was Titan. Claire stopped writing. He detected an IED before any of us saw it, Ronan continued. Gave us time to move. His voice did not waver. He didn't make it. Claire's expression softened, but did not pity. That stayed with you? It didn't leave. Ronan glanced at Ares. When I saw that metal bar raised, I knew how that story ends. Claire nodded slowly. So this was about redemption? No. The word came firm. She blinked. No? It wasn't about fixing the past. He looked out at the horizon again. It was about not repeating it. Claire let the silence sit. That's different. Yes. She studied Ares once more. He seems different now than in the photos from the arrest. He is? What changed? Ronan considered the question. He stopped expecting pain. Claire wrote that down carefully. And you? Ronan gave a faint, almost humorless smile. I stopped expecting loss. When Claire left, she thanked him quietly. I'll send you a copy before publication, she said. You don't need to. I want to. She meant it. Ronan watched her vehicle disappear down the road before turning back toward the cabin. Inside, warmth greeted them. Ares walked directly to his usual spot near the stove and lay down. No pacing. No scanning. Ronan knelt beside him. You didn't save me, he said quietly. Ares's tail thumped once against the wood floor. Ronan let out a slow breath. He understood now what the reporter had missed. It wasn't about honor. It wasn't about headlines. It wasn't about proving something to a town or to himself. It was about a moment. That instant when a metal bar had risen and a pair of exhausted amber eyes had looked up, not in surrender, not in rage, in expectation. As if Ronan were already decided. As if he were the answer. And in that instant, Ronan had realized something terrifying and simple. He could not survive another story where he had the power to intervene and chose not to, not because of guilt, because of identity. Ares did not see his past. He did not see the missions. He did not see the explosions. He saw the present, every time. And that was the real reason. Ronan stood and looked out at the lake one more time. The sunlight was softer now, lower in the sky, too bright earlier, balanced now. Behind him, Ares rose and came to stand at his side without being called. Not because he feared being left, because he belonged there. Ronan rested a hand lightly on the dog's neck. Different battlefield, he murmured. No medals, no uniforms. A just choice. And this time, he had made it in time. Outside, the wind shifted across the ice. Inside, there was no echo of metal. Only breath. Steady. Some miracles do not arrive with thunder or blazing light. Some arrive quietly, on 4 tired paws, in the middle of an ordinary morning. We often pray for grand signs, for undeniable proof that God is listening. But sometimes the answer does not look like rescue from the sky. Sometimes it looks like a moment, 30 seconds, where we are given the chance to choose who we truly are. Ronan thought he saved a dog. Oh, but perhaps God placed that dog in his path to save something inside him that was slowly fading. Not with magic, not with spectacle, but with responsibility. Faith is not always about what God does for us. Sometimes it is about what He trusts us to do. Every day, we are given small moments that look insignificant. A stranger who needs help, a voice that needs defending, a decision that no one else will witness. Those are the moments that shape our souls. Those are the quiet battlefields where character is forged. You may never stand in a warehouse or face a raised metal bar, but you will face your own 30 seconds. And when that moment comes, may you choose courage. May you choose compassion. May you choose not to look away. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to remember that goodness still exists. Leave a comment about a moment when you chose to step forward instead of stepping back. It's in your path the right people, and in your path the right people, and the right reasons, at exactly the right time. And when your moment arrives, may you recognize it. Because sometimes the miracle is not what saves us, it is what calls us to act.